Hello, everyone. Welcome to Coffee with Dr. Tom. And this morning, I actually have a cold, refreshing beverage instead of coffee because it's a little hot here. But welcome. It's nice to be here with you. Thank you so much. I hope you all are doing well and you are not just handling this time of isolation, but rather thriving in this time. And I know that sounds weird for some of you, but it's really an ideal time to look at some of the things we're doing in our lives and are they really necessary? I had a great conversation yesterday with my group of guys that we talk every once in a while, and we did a Zoom call, and a number of the guys are saying that they're liking being more at home with their spouse, and they're having deeper conversations and realizing that all of the ways they were living life prior to the quarantine, some of it was really unnecessary, and they're finding more awareness, if I can say that word, or consciousness. So I don't want to get all woo-woo here, but I hope that you are finding some empowering times right now in the world that you're in. With that said, I want to go right into our topic of today because there is so much to say. So I'm going to share my screen. Let me do that first. Here and share. And while I'm doing that, let me give a shout out to the Instagram folks that are here. Hi, everyone. I'm looking down at my computer, but I'm aware you're here and grateful that you're here. Thank you so much. So what I'm going to be talking about today is pretty geeky. There's some concepts here that for our healthcare practitioners, I hope they're eye-opening. And for our general public, that it gets you thinking about, I really need to learn a little more about this. And the reason that I've chosen this topic today is twofold. One, 4 of my good friends just had a webinar last week sponsored by the Institute for Functional Medicine, and they brought up some really good points that I haven't talked about before and I hadn't actually thought about, so I'm very grateful to them. That's Dr. Patrick Hanaway and Sam Yannock and Cara Fitzgerald and Joe Pizzorno. They're all incredible doctors and very smart people that I'm honored to even sit at the table with them. And I'm going to talk to you about part of the message that they brought out last week because it's really important for all of us. And it's important because we all have heard that these viruses, these flu viruses that we get, and just a reminder, last year, 62,000 people died in the US from the flu, and very few people even knew about it. That it wasn't a big hullabaloo. And right now we're just over 80,000 with this current pandemic deaths in the US. So it's worse. But if you look at the last 10 years, the number of people in the US that have died from the flu has some years have been up high, some years down around 20,000, some years about 50, some years about 30, some years 60. Last year was 62, and this year is higher. It's a different virus. But this is not unheard of, but there's a lot more response to this one. And what we know from previous flus is that they tend to come back in the fall. That as the spring and summer comes into play, things calm down, and we're going to see an opening up of our quarantine situation, which is, I think, a good idea. But if you did not get sick in this first round, if there is a second round, and most epidemiologists agree there will be, how do you help ensure that your system is ready to go? So I'm talking for benefit for the next 6 to 8 months in this topic today. And the primary message, can you boost the immune system too much? And I spelled two with four O's purposely, that it's yes, you can. And so I want to introduce the topic today, and this will give most all of us months to be thinking about this and to spend a little bit of time looking into it with your healthcare practitioner. And if they poo-poo this, or they say, well, I don't really know, well, that's a pretty good idea. And so if you don't hear confidence, you need to bring another healthcare practitioner on your team. Don't fire the one you've got, but bring somebody else on the team who can guide you through this upcoming full season that we are just getting into right now with this current pandemic. So let's move on. So thank you all for being here. It really is an honor. And the responses that you send are very empowering. For you say, he gets, he hears a lot. No, I read every one of them, and my staff reads them, and it puts smiles in our heart to see how this information is being taken and how you're applying the principles. I didn't think of it to read a couple of those to you here today, but maybe next time. But please make a comment and share this with your friends. You all know that when you share Facebook live events with family and members, Facebook says, oh, look at this. More people are listening to this. And then they'll market it out. They put it in the inbox of more people. So your likes, your comments, and your shares really do make a difference in reaching more of the world. And so thank you for being a partner with us in that. And I really mean that. Thank you so much. And I've started each of these coffees with the same quote because it's really how we're supposed to be living our lives, right? Prevention is the ultimate principle of wisdom. To cure a disease after it has manifested is like digging a well when one is thirsty, or forging a weapon after the war has begun. So for the vast majority of people who didn't have to go to the hospital with this current viral exposure, the war is not over, that there's more coming. And so forging your weapon after you're sick is trying to play catch up. So if this thing's coming back in the fall, which likely it will to some degree, how do you prepare this summer? What do you do this summer? And this is hopefully a wake-up call for a lot of people who are kind of on the fence. Well, I know I shouldn't be eating that. Yeah, I know. I should be exercising. Let's take the should out and empower you, if we can, to take some action steps. And as you hear me say so often, base hits win the ball game. It's the baby steps you take that produce the positive results that you want. So for those of you that have been in our coffees before, you know that this is the course of the SARS-CoV-2 virus, that when people are exposed, and infected means the bug's inside of you, some people get sick, most people don't. They never knew that they were exposed. But for those that get sick in phase 2, some of them handle it within a couple days. They have a light fever, sore throat, little diarrhea, and then they're fine. But those that don't have to go to the hospital. And those that go to the hospital, some of them have to go into ICU, intensive care. And those that have to go into intensive care, some of them have to be put on respirators. And I showed you the studies last week from the Journal of the American Medical Association. They looked at 5,700 people who had to go to the hospital in New York in this current pandemic that we're in. And if they had to be put on respirators, 89.1% of them died. That's 9 out of 10 died who were put on respirators. What does that mean? Don't go on a respirator. It's a very, very last resort. It may be all that the doctor and that ICU has for tools after they've tried everything else, but hopefully we're giving you some tools that you can include in consideration And I've talked before about the studies that came out of China on IVs of vitamin C and how they dramatically got people off of respirators in 24 hours. It was startling how many people. So there's more information that people can learn, right? But you just want to have some baseline understanding of this. And in these next few months, make sure your healthcare practitioner is up to speed on some of this. And I'm going to give you some references here that will be very helpful for you. Jaw-dropping from my friends who I mentioned, Doctors Yannick, Fitzgerald, and Pizzorno. And this event that I'll give you the link to was hosted by my friend, Dr. Patrick Hanaway. Did a great job, and it's just jaw-dropping to hear the information. But we're all going to be in one of these three phases. We are now, or we will be in the fall. So let's just talk about this. And the other slide from every coffee I've done is from my mentor, Dr. Bland, who says, don't forget that this is a lifestyle disease. The only people that get sick are people whose immune systems aren't strong enough to handle the viral exposure, period. End of comment. So you get a light fever and you're okay after that. Okay, you handle it, but you had to call up the reserves, which means that current lifestyle has set up an immune system that couldn't handle the exposure without calling up reserves. And luckily you had enough reserves, but don't be floating on a cloud thinking you're great because you had a 101 fever for 2 days and you're fine now and you've got antibodies. Don't blow this off. That recognize that the symptoms you had were the virus in the process of taking over, and you had to call up reserves that were successful, okay? Don't think everything's cool. So it's a lifestyle disease. So it's the things that we do in our lifestyle that will make the difference here. Now, why did Italy get hit so hard? How come Italy has one of the highest percentages of people that died? Well, look at this. The Lombardy region in northern Italy, where this thing occurred, ranks among the most air polluted areas of Europe. And we're going to talk about this pollution thing in your body and how toxic we are and how our immune system is constantly fighting these toxins at a level that you don't know. You don't know what's going on unless you've been diagnosed with diabetes or asthma or bronchitis or other lung conditions. You have no idea it's going on, but you're fighting this stuff all the time, this air pollution. I talked about it in episode, I think it was 7, maybe 6, but we're going to put the links here to the episodes. I already gave the list to the team, so they're going to post the links here of the different coffees we've already done that we talked about some of these concepts, so you can go back and review. And for those of you who think that your air is fine, this is what I tell you. You ever sit in your house and you look out, you look towards the window and you see this, if the angle's right of the sun, you can see the sun rays coming through the window and you see all that stuff floating in the air, the dust in the air. That's air particulate matter that your lungs are sucking in. And it's full of phthalates and benzenes and formaldehydes. And oh no, my house is clean. Really? You have kitchen cabinets that are press board or bathroom cabinets that are press board, not solid wood, loaded with formaldehyde that's outgassing all the time. All the time. You have plastic blinds on your windows, outgassing phthalates. Those are the chemicals that mold plastic, outgassing phthalates into the air. That's the crud that you're seeing in the air in the sunshine that's coming through that you can see once in a while. And you're breathing that in all the time and it accumulates. So why was it that elders in Italy, a much larger percentage of them died with this virus early on? Well, there's two things. This is one, and Northern Italy had an influx in late 2019 of lots and lots of workers from Wuhan who came there to do construction projects. And so the virus likely came there first, and the people who live in this area whose lungs are walking 2-pack-a-day cigarette smokers, and there's a lot of cigarette smoke in Europe also, a lot of people are smoking in Italy. but their lungs, even if they're not smokers, are all fibrotic because they're sucking in these fumes all the time. They had problems, much higher degree of problems. So I need to talk to you a little bit about cleaning your air and how are you going to clean the air in your home. So that particulate matter that you see in the air, 2.5 or 10 microns, 10 microns that's a human hair. That drawing there is a human hair. And the 2.5 microns, it takes about 40 of those to fill up a human hair. That's how small they are. The 10 microns takes about 10, 12 of them to fill up a human hair. But that stuff goes right through your nasal cavities, right down into the lungs, also right up into the brain, triggering your immune system to fight this particulate matter, and you get inflammation in your brain. And if you read my book, You Can Fix Your Brain, which is around here somewhere, but I can't hold it up right now because I don't see it. If you read the book, You Can Fix Your Brain, you understand the mechanisms that trigger the brain inflammation, which now the result is 1 out of 3 elders in America die with Alzheimer's or another dementia. That came out last year from the Alzheimer's Association, 1 out of 3. And it's because of the years of all this stuff. And it's the same with this virus. It's the years of accumulated environmental toxins inside the lungs, inside the body, that have been weakening your immune system's been fighting really hard to fight this stuff, keep it under control, that sets you up for a more severe reaction. Weakened immune system and overloaded, congested body full of environmental toxins. Really important factors to take into consideration. What does that mean? It means you got to detox. You got to clean your air and you have to detox a bit. And we're going to talk about that. So when you breathe in this air, it just accumulates in your lungs and much of it gets into your bloodstream and then circulates through your body and accumulates in other areas. So how do we create a healthy immune supporting environment? Last time, or 2 times ago, I talked about the microbiome of the world around you. We've all heard about the microbiome in our guts and that it's 70 to 80% of the immune system and how important that is. But most of us had not heard about a microbiome in the environment, like the microbiome on the surface of your remote control, the microbiome on the surface of the coffee table, the microbiome on the surface of your kitchen counters, the microbiome on the surface of your kitchen cutting boards, on your silverware. You know, this is really a great study. I always smile when I think about this study. There's a 40% reduction in asthma in households that don't have a dishwasher. A 40% reduction in kids getting asthma if the house doesn't have a dishwasher. What does that mean? It means you're washing stuff by hand. What does that mean? It means there's crud on the fork every once in a while that's been washed. Marcy reminds me all the time when I do the dishes and here comes the pot that's got a little something on it. And I just want to say, hey, microbiome, it's a microbiome, you know. I can't slide with that with her, but, you know, little joke. But when we're exposed to minute amounts of crud from the environment, it toughens our immune system. It's a really good exercise to take a couple of the 1 hour a weeks that I've recommended to you in the past and learn more about the hygiene theory. The hygiene theory says the more hygienic our environment is with, you know, using bleach and trying to sterilize everything, the more degenerative disease you get. Because we need exposure to some of the bugs a little bit once in a while because it strengthens our immune system. They're fighting a little bit. You get less asthma. You get less autoimmune diseases. And it's prevalent theory as to why autoimmune diseases have gone like this in the last 30 years is because of the hygiene theory. Couple that with the incredible increase in toxins we're exposed to in the environment. So we're getting more and more assault from things that our bodies are not accustomed to dealing with, like perchloroethylenes and benzenes and formaldehyde, but then we're sterilizing everything, so our immune systems get weaker and weaker, And the result is here comes more autoimmune disease. So having a healthy immune supporting environment is really important. And in coffee number 5, I talked how and why you clean the house, and everyone lives happily ever after. And I talked a lot about the environment that we live in and some pearls for you. And we gave you some handouts there. And I forgot a handout in that session that I wanted to give you. And we put the handout together because of this study that came from NASA. It said a study of interior landscape plants for indoor air pollution abatement, which means get rid of the indoor air pollution with houseplants. And what they showed, look at the columns of formaldehyde and benzene and trichloroethylene, and then the plants. And what they did was they measured the amount of the toxin in the air, and then they put a plant in the room for 24 hours. And then they measured it again. And look at the numbers here, 70% removal of formaldehyde when you put mascane, that plant, in the room for 24 hours. 50% removal of formaldehyde when you put a daisy in the room for 24 hours. 35% removal of trichloroethylene when you put a Gerber daisy in the room for 24 hours. It's like, what? What? All that crud that you see in the sunshine, the reflection of the sunshine when it's coming through the window, a lot of that crud gets absorbed by houseplants. You all need to develop y'all need to develop a green thumb. Yeah, I'm from Chicago originally, but y'all was appropriate there. Y'all need to develop a green thumb. And if you can't develop a green thumb, you buy some plants from the florist. And yet, how often should I water them? And do they need like right in the window sun, or can they be just in the room? And get some guidelines from them, or take a course online on raising houseplants, 1 hour a week, take your 1 hour a week, get some houseplants in there. So we put together this handout for you. It's 9 pages on houseplants as air purifiers. And what I said in there, and what's really important, I want to emphasize, is modern air purifiers are extremely efficient at getting these toxins out. And I recommend everyone get an air purifier in your home if you can. If you have a healthcare practitioner, ask them what they recommend. We'll put a link here for you so you can see the ones that we recommend. And you don't have to get that one. You just get the best that you can afford. But get air purifiers in your house. And if you can't afford an air purifier because they're expensive and you have to replace the filters every once in a while, and you got other reasons why you're not going to get one, get some houseplants in there because they make a huge difference. Here's 1 page of those 9 pages about formaldehydes. And they're in the press board, they're in your fake wood furniture or your surface wood that's got press board inside of it. And then there's the plants that absorb formaldehyde: bamboo palm, Dracenia janicrae, mother-in-law's tongue, a green spider plant, golden pathos. So put a little time, get some house plants, make it look nice in your house, and it'll suck up some of these toxins that won't go into your kids' lungs, right? These little things will make a huge difference. And I forgot this on day 5 of the coffee, so I wanted to put it in here today for you. NASA estimates that 1 6-inch plant was needed for every 100 square feet of interior space to effectively remove the chemicals above and potentially many others. This equates to only 1 or 2 plants for most rooms in your average house. You don't have to live in a garden, if you don't want to, but 1 or 2 plants will make a big difference. And you saw the percentages of getting some of these toxic chemicals out of the air that you're inhaling every day, that weakens your lungs and your immune system, that when you're exposed to a virus, you don't have the juice to take care of the virus, and it affects your lungs, and you go to the hospital and they put you on a respirator and 9 out of 10 die. I don't mean to make it so simple, but you got to understand you have to do baby steps to protect yourself from what you're being exposed to in the world. So on day 12, I talked about boosting the environmental immune system. And you can go back and listen to that one if you missed that one. And we talked about the microbiome and how important the microbiome is. And the key is the diversity of the microbiome. That's why the 5-step program to build the diversity of the microbiome that I gave you in that coffee is so important. Everyone needs to be doing that. Everyone needs to be taking applesauce, unless you're allergic to apples. And there are a few people that are, not many, but a few, because it's a baby step. And you got to train yourself, because the current lifestyle has you set up to be vulnerable, right? So you take these baby steps and start to transition your lifestyle. And I really like this one. And it's a nice study. It's a good study, but I really like that it shows the diversity of what the guy like me sitting in an office on his computer all day, what kind of a diversity of microbiome is he exposed to that strengthens his immune system? Not much, especially if his wife, trying to be a really good partner, is using bleach in the house and sterilizing everything. There's not much diversity there. Where you take the cowboy out there riding his horse and he's bringing a Christmas tree home for Christmas, that guy is being exposed all the time. That's one of the reasons why it's so good to go for walks outside. Get outside every day. There's something called forest bathing that I talked about. I don't remember which coffee it was. And it strengthens your immune system, forest bathing. Just Google forest bathing if you want. You'll see some of the studies on it. But get some exposure to bugs. Your kids should be playing in the dirt. They're meant to be. Humans are meant to be living in dirt. Now, our ancestors, our immune systems are the same as our ancestors, and they were designed so that when we're exposed to all this stuff out in the environment, our immune system takes care of it. They don't have rheumatoid arthritis in African villages. They don't have MS in African villages. These people that are living like their ancestors hundreds and hundreds of years ago in mud huts and stuff, they're poor and they've got the diseases of the poor, but they don't have autoimmune diseases because their immune system won't let it happen. But they have diseases of starvation and compromised immune systems. These bugs come in like Ebola and things like that. So I'm not saying we should be living like that, but we should learn from the strength of their immune systems preventing the development of autoimmune diseases. What is that? It's called the hygiene theory. Okay, I wanted to put this in here because for people that have a serious reaction to exposure to this virus, and they go to the hospital and they're put in ICU and their lungs are filling up and they have acute respiratory distress syndrome. That is a condition that is it's called a cytokine storm. Your immune system is reacting really hard against crud in your system. The crud includes the bacteria, the virus that you've just been exposed to, but it also includes all the crud that's already there. And it's called sepsis. And 250,000 people a year, every year in the US, die from sepsis. 1.7 million people a year get this, and they're hospitalized or in intensive care. Most of them come through. With this current virus, it's worse. Most of them don't come through, but some of them do. But it's the environment of the lungs and the environment of the body that's already set up and, excuse my term, polluted. It's a polluted body already with lots of bacterial crud and toxic chemicals that have accumulated that contributes to the fueling of this cytokine storm. Well, what does that mean then? It means we all need to learn to detox to help flush your body out of the accumulated crud that's in there. Not after you have a disease, not after the war has begun, but beforehand. And we had a whole session on detoxing. And we'll put the link in here so you can watch the videos I've done on detoxing. and basic detoxing. First thing you all need to do, we all need to do, a ½ ounce of water per pound body weight. Unless you have kidney disease, everyone else, a ½ ounce of water per pound body weight. I weigh about 180, so that's 90 ounces of water a day. 90. That's 11 8-ounce glasses a day. 11. This is probably about 10 ounces. So that would be 9 of these a day. 9 every day. That's minimum to help your body flush out the crud that's in there. I've said this for years. You know, when you wake up in the morning, first thing most people do is go to the bathroom. Next, go out and get 2 big glasses of water and drink them down within 5 minutes. Oh, I feel like I'm going to drown. You won't drown, I promise. And within a few days, your body will be looking forward to 2 big glasses of water as soon as you start your day. Your bowels work better. You come out and say, honey, I just had the best bowel movement I've had in years. It's like, whoa, and I mean, that's, sorry, but okay. But 2 big glasses of water a day. Marcy's just smiling here, holding the camera for the Instagram group. Yeah, thank you. I was going to say LinkedIn, but it's not LinkedIn. This is the study, the graph in the study that came out many years ago that I learned about sepsis and how sepsis begins and where it comes from. Critically important that we all just have an overview of what this is. You don't have to learn this in detail. I'm sorry it's a little geeky, but the message here, whether it's cardiovascular disease, heart disease, digestive system diseases like colitis or inflammatory bowel disease, lung diseases like what this current pandemic is making us vulnerable to, kidney disease, cancers, autoimmune diseases, different infections, or burns, it doesn't matter what the diseases you get. This is the mechanism by which it occurs. You start on the outside of the circle and you're healthy. Then all of a sudden you're at risk. Why do you get at risk? Because you develop this thing called intestinal permeability, or what's called the leaky gut. Now this crud goes from your gut in the food you're eating, in the beverages you're drinking, goes right through the tears in the cheesecloth. I talked about that in an earlier copy with the graphics of all that. Cheesecloth lines the inside of the gut, and you get tears in the cheesecloth. Now you got a leaky gut. And it's that mechanism that sets you up. And you get this crud getting into your bloodstream. It's bacteria, and it's the exhaust of bacteria called lipopolysaccharides, LPS. And then you get a systemic inflammatory immune response, meaning you get inflamed. And maybe it's going to manifest as conjunctivitis, or it's going to manifest as depression. Just go online to Google and type in depression and LPS, or depression and leaky gut. Here come the studies. And that's why when people have cognitive complaints like depression or anxiety or schizophrenia, you also have to include, when you're dealing with the symptoms, you have to include heal the gut. Every time. You have to include that, or else you're just chasing the tail, like a dog chasing his tail. You're taking the meds, but the mechanism causing this continues. So this progression continues. And after the systemic inflammatory immune response, then you get sepsis. 1.7 million people a year get this. Then if it's not taken care of, you get multiple organ dysfunction. That's what's happening with this current virus, that for people that are in intensive care units, and then it can proceed to death. But look where the whole mechanism begins. You want to address this before you need to fight the war. And so you want to talk to your healthcare practitioner. Do I have this intestinal permeability thing, this leaky gut? And if they say, oh, don't worry about it, it's all a bunch of nonsense. No, you're fine. You don't have any symptoms, do you? Your gut's fine. Don't worry about it. You're fine. Time to get another practitioner as part of your healthcare team. Just Google leaky gut and read about it, or get my book, one of my books, and read about it and see if it makes sense to you. And then you check. You just check. And the test, now it's a finger prick test. It's an easy finger prick test or a standard blood draw. Both are just as accurate. And it's called the Wheat Zoomer. That's the most accurate test out there right now, looking for the leaky gut. It also looks to see if you have a sensitivity to wheat, because wheat, and I talked about in an earlier session, we now know there are many studies. Every time you eat wheat, you get tears in the cheesecloth. You get a transient intestinal permeability every time you eat it. And at breakfast, lunch, dinner, toast, sandwich, pasta, cookies, day after day after day, but the gut heals, the gut heals, the gut heals until you don't heal anymore. Now you got leaky gut. Now you got a pathogenic leaky gut. And that's true for all of us. The science is really clear. Lots of videos I've done about that. That's all out there. But I'm bringing this up to you because I just announced this a couple of days ago. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to talk to everybody here about it. We're about to do an open label case trial study. And what we're going to do, and I'm doing this because I was just interviewed on the Keto Summit. It's an online summit that'll be airing, or I think it's airing this week, actually, about, is a ketogenic diet good for you? And I take the position it can be really good for you, or it can be really bad for you. And then I talk about why in the interview. But we're going to do this open label case trial study on this. And if anyone's interested in being a part of this study, you can go to the link, theDr.com /LPS, theDr.com /LPS. We'll post that link and learn about it, because we're going to find out if you have a leaky gut, and can we help you fix that leaky gut within 90 days. So that's available to everyone, and I wanted to mention it to you here. So far, it's about half full. I announced it a couple days ago, so there's still some slots, and you can watch the video about it and see if that's of interest for you. So this is the paper that I started off this coffee with, that just came out last week by my friend Sam Yunick and Joe Pizzorno and Kara Fitzgerald. And and Helen Messier. Sorry, Helen, I forgot to mention you earlier. And this paper looks at this current COVID-19 pandemic that we're in from a functional medicine perspective. It's a great paper. We'll give you the link to it. And no, we're not going to give you the link, but we'll have the papers here for those that want all the papers. But the link is below. You'll see it on the screen here, and you can just Google that and get it there. But also, I'm going to give you all the papers. They're available if you want all the papers, and I'll talk about that later. But they pointed out a couple of things, that the way you want to look at this current pandemic, there are 4 different phases to the pandemic. Prevention, which is what that first quote talks about. You don't forge your tools for war after the war has begun. Infection, if you're exposed, how does your body respond to it? Inflammation, meaning you're getting symptoms now. And recovery. 4 different phases, 4 different approaches. Some of them overlap, but they're 4 different approaches. And this is where it's going to get a little geeky for you, but I want you to understand this so that there's no mistakes about the things that we can do at home. So I talk about 2 different immune systems in all of these coffees. I've talked about the innate immune system, the one that responds automatically, and then there is the big backup, the adaptive immune system. The adaptive immune system is the autoimmune mechanisms that occur. So when you test to see if you've been exposed to this virus, you test for antibodies. That's the adaptive immune system. Now they're turned on to protect you. And that's how vaccinations work and immunizations work, is to stimulate the body to make antibodies to protect you from a future exposure. So Type 1 interferon response is the innate, the immediate response. So the orange bar, the one in the middle there, that orange little mound is the viral load. How much virus do you have? So you can see the first thing that happens, you're exposed to a little virus, then the innate immune system gets turned on, it ramps up. If it does its job well, the virus starts tapering down. And you've got a really mild clinical course. You know, you got a little bit of symptoms maybe or nothing at all. Another situation that occurs is when the innate immune response isn't strong enough. And the virus, once you're exposed to it, it keeps shedding and shedding and shedding and shedding. And it's more prevalent than the innate response to keep it in check. When that happens, you get more extensive disease, right? Notice when the red mound first starts is when that viral load is way up there. Now you start getting more symptoms, and that can get worse and worse and worse. So the way you approach this thing depends on what stage you're in. The ideal stage for everyone that I started this coffee off with is you jump on this now for the fall, right? You forge your weapons before the war begins again. But these are the different stages. And they talk about 5 different targets of support. And this is kind of conceptual. This is not, what do I take? What do I take? This is, what do I want to accomplish in the actions I'm about to take? It's really well done. And kudos to all 4 of my friends here. And next time we're on a conference or we're at a seminar teaching together, I guess I'm going to have to buy the bottle of wine for the table, right? Because this is so well done. Really proud of them for what they've done here. This is the kind of science that helps you to think about what's the way to approach this problem that I'm in right now. And this part, these 2 here, supporting the natural killer cells and supporting Th1, I put it in here for you to recognize that's the innate immune system. So this is the target of when do I want to really help the innate immune system. And you see where this thing stops for lines 3 and 4. You don't support natural killer cells or the innate immune system when you're getting escalating inflammation. You don't want to support that immune system because your immune system's working as hard as it can right now. And you want to taper down on trying to produce more immune activity. And where you really want to emphasize and ramp up is the bottom one, anti-inflammatory approaches. How do you calm this thing down that now so that you don't go into the cytokine storm, which is where you why people are put on respirators and 9 out of 10 of them die on a respirator. You don't want to go there. So this concept, I saw that and I said, of course, that makes perfect sense. Why didn't I think of that? But I didn't, you know, and that's why we're a faculty and we learn from each other, right? All the time on that one. And here are some of the recommendations for the healthcare practitioners in the group and those who are doing things on their own. I always recommend you have a healthcare practitioner as part of your healthcare team, but that these are safe recommendations, and you can see the foundational things that you do: vitamin C all the way through, vitamin K, vitamin D, vitamin A, all the way through, fish oils all the way through, melatonin all the way through, quercetin all the way through. That these are things, N-acetylcysteine all the way through. And because you don't run the risk of having a detrimental side effect of enhancing innate immune system function with these things. They're not going to jumpstart a car that's already running. I think I gave the analogy this morning, you know, if you run 220 current through a 110 machine, you burn out the engine really quick, right? And because Marzi and I live in Italy, I've done that. You know, I brought some things over from US, some equipment or something, and I plug it in and it works. And then there's smoke, and I go, oh no, I did that again, right? That's plugging 110 into 220. And you don't want to do that with your immune system. So this is a general guideline that you can use as to what to take and what is safe and what is not. So how you approach this really depends. Are you in box A or are you in box B? Are you high inflammatory at baseline or are you low inflammatory at baseline? How do you know? Are you diagnosed with a disease right now? Do you have diabetes? Do you have high blood pressure? Do you have breathing difficulties, asthma? Do you have arthritis? Do you have an autoimmune disease? You're high inflammatory right now. Well, I did okay. I just had a little fever for a couple days and I'm fine. I've got the antibodies now. And, you know, my diabetes is under control with the medication. No, it's not. Your blood sugar may be under control, but the diabetes isn't. The mechanisms are still going on, and they're called comorbidities, meaning much higher risk of Alzheimer's, much higher risk of heart attacks, much higher risk of strokes when you're on your medication and your blood sugar is stable. So it's not under control. There's a lid on the pressure cooker, and you need the medications right now, perhaps, but wake up. If you're high inflammatory, the effort needs to be, how do I get to low inflammatory at baseline? Baseline means when I'm exposed to this virus again, or the first time. That's the way we have to be thinking about this. And it's uncomfortable to think like this. We want to think, well, you know, I've got the pill, you know, if I get a little fever, you know, I'll just take some aspirin. No, you don't. Fever's good for you. But well, you know, if I get some symptoms, I'll just take something and I'll be better. No, no, no. You're asking for last resort. Bring in my reserves, bring in everything I've got to deal with this thing. You want to be low inflammatory baseline, strong immune system. And we've talked about the immune system before. And how do you get there? You get there by building the diversity of your microbiome. That's the most important thing. 70 to 80% of your immune system is in your gut. When you build a healthy diversity to your microbiome by the 5-phase approach that we talked about in the other coffee, you're strengthening that immune system, robust immune system, to deal with whatever you're exposed to. It's the same thing you do if you're diagnosed with rheumatoid, you do the 5-phase approach. If you're diagnosed with cognitive decline or depression, you do the 5-phase approach. If you're diagnosed with arthritis, you do the 5-phase approach. Why? Because that's where the majority of your immune system is. You know, this is basic 101 to be healthy and vibrant, is build the diversity of your microbiome. And this is a website where the webinar that Sam and Kara and Joe did, Drs. Yannick, Fitzgerald, and Pizzorno did with Dr. Hanaway as a moderator. If you go to that website, and you'll see there's a whole handout here on how to use nutraceuticals and botanicals and the dosing of all that that's safe. What are the safe guidelines? But then the webinar is there, and you can watch it. And it's really geeky for those of you that are not healthcare practitioners, but you'll pick up a lot of good things. Some things, you know, will be new language, but much of it, you say, well, that just makes sense. That makes sense, right? And they talk about how they're treating patients right now. And they're really great practitioners. And I'd recommend you all consider going to this website, watching the webinar. It's about an hour long. I think it's an hour and 5 minutes. And putting your questions together. And you can bring your questions to me on my Facebook Lives. You know, we do Facebook Live every Tuesday at 4 o'clock Pacific, 7 o'clock Eastern, 1 a.m. in Italy, 8:30 a.m. Wednesday morning in Australia. But you can bring questions there, and you know, we'll answer as many as we can. I wanted to talk for a minute about this one. We saw this almost 2 months ago now, where the government said, you know, let's fast track okaying hydroxychloroquine to use during this viral outbreak. Why? Because it works. It seemed to work. The studies were showing it seemed to work. And I went through that, I think it was in Coffee 2. But there's some new information I want to show you. And I showed you this study before, that zinc, when you get zinc inside the cell, it stops the virus from shedding. That's why hydroxychloroquine works with malaria. And that's why they've used it for 70 or 80 years. It's because hydroxychloroquine is an ionophore, a zinc ionophore. What does that mean? It means it's an escort. And hydroxychloroquine escorts zinc from the bloodstream, where it doesn't do much in the bloodstream. It's got to get into your cells, but it escorts it from the bloodstream right into the cell. And when you have enough zinc inside the cell, the virus can't shed. The virus can't, it doesn't reproduce, it sheds, breaks off a little, which goes into your own DNA, and now there's more virus, right? It can't shed if there's enough zinc. If there's not enough zinc, it sheds. And hydroxychloroquine helps with that process. So does chloroquine, which comes from the fever tree. And also, that's where tonic water came from, is to take the chloroquine more. So tonic water now has some chloroquine in it. There's no evidence that tonic water is going to prevent this viral infection. There's no evidence. But Marzi and I are doing a little tonic water every day because it's not going to hurt. And it's an ionophore. It helps to get more zinc inside your cells. That's true. No question on that. What, is it going to stop the virus? I don't know, but it's not going to hurt. You just have to be careful of the copycat tonic waters that have a bunch of chemical crud in them. Just look for chloroquine on the can of the tonic water, or on the bottle. Fever Tree is the company that we drink. We buy their stuff. They have 5 different tonic waters, and one of them is low in sugar. It's called India Light, and there's no artificial sweeteners in it, but it's just less sugar, because they put a lot of sugar in tonic water. So I don't recommend drinking it very often at all. But during this time right now, if you can't get the India Light Fever Tree tonic water, get a little tonic water, dilute it, and just drink a little, sip it a little bit during the day. Quinine. Oh, I said chloroquine. No, yeah, it's quinine. It's quinine that's in the tonic water, not chloroquine. It's quinine that's in the tonic water, which is what is the zinc ionophore, and escorts zinc inside the cell. And we know zinc inhibits the virus from shedding. And the SARS-CoV-2 virus, we know it does that. And this is really geeky, but I wanted to show it to you. And if you look at it closely, what it shows on this bar, the darker it is, the more virus is in the cell. So then 10, 50, 100, 200, 500, that's the amount of zinc they put inside the cell, and it just kills the virus. The virus disappears because it can't shed. Zinc inside your cells blocks this virus from shedding. It's difficult to generate enough zinc inside your cell. Therefore, prophylactic administration, meaning taking zinc supplements, may not play a role against SARS-CoV-2 by themselves. When combined with the zinc ionophore, like chloroquine, hydroxychloroquine, quinine, cellular uptakes increase, making it more likely to achieve suitably elevated zinc levels inside your cell. And this study just came out last week, and they looked at people who are taking hydroxychloroquine in the hospital, and what if they gave them some extra zinc? And if you look at the numbers here, the ones that took extra zinc, they took hydroxychloroquine with zinc compared to hydroxychloroquine without zinc. And you see what happened here, that 9% of those that took zinc and they're on hydroxychloroquine needed to go to ICU. 15.7% if they didn't take zinc. How many needed invasive ventilation, which we know is the numbers aren't good at all on survival? 8% if they were taking zinc. 16% if they were not, double. How many died? 13% if they were not taking zinc, 13% if they were taking zinc, 23% if they were not. So look at the numbers here. I mean, it's jaw-dropping. When would you not give zinc if you're taking hydroxychloroquine? You would also give zinc because hydroxychloroquine is the ionophore that escorts zinc inside the cell that stops the virus from shedding. Give a little extra zinc. It's safe and easy to do. After adjusting for the time at which zinc was added to the protocol, an increased frequency of being discharged to go home, 53% increase, and a reduction in mortality by more than half occurred. So if they gave zinc along with the hydroxychloroquine, they got much better results. This just came out last week, and it's from the New York University School of Medicine, Grossman School of Medicine. And I wanted to remind you about quercetin because quercetin is a zinc ionophore, and quercetin is a nutrient. You saw it in the graphs from this study from Dr. Yannick and the team, that quercetin is an excellent zinc ionophore. It's a good idea to be taking a little extra quercetin right now. It's important as one of the multiple flavonoids shown in vitro to block the activity of the MERS-CoV virus. In a molecular docking study looking for agents that could bind to this virus, researchers found quercetin to be the 5th most effective. Now, this concept of stopping the virus from binding onto your ACE2 receptors, the virus gets inside your cell by binding onto the ACE2 receptor. And I've talked about in multiple coffees how important eating the rainbow diet is, because the rainbow diet, and the deeper, the richer the colors, the more polyphenols are in the fruit or vegetable. Many of those polyphenols, quercetin is one of those polyphenols, many of them block the virus from binding onto the ACE2 receptor. That's one of the reasons why you want to be eating raspberries every day, or blueberries every day, and red beets every day, and green broccoli every day. The deeper the color, the better. Marzi just made some broccoli the other night in a dish. How did you do that? What was it? Vinegar? What else? She blanched the broccoli in a little bit of water, with a little bit of vinegar in it, and a little bit of sugar in it. And she blanched it. The broccoli was delicious, and it was still green, a bright green color, that it was protected from losing some of those nutrients in the water just by blanching it for a couple of minutes. It was delicious. Oh, that was really good. Here are some foods that are high in quercetin. So if you don't want to take a supplement of quercetin, these are the foods. And I was really happy to see the top of the list was capers. I love capers, and Marzi adds them a lot. You know, if she makes a tuna fish sandwich for lunch on gluten-free bread, and the tuna fish is called ventresca. It comes from our friends at Vital Choice Seafoods. Eddie, let's put a link into Vital Choice. Vital Choice Seafoods, their tuna fish is the lowest in mercury, almost undetectable, and it's delicious. And 1 can of that tuna fish has 7 grams of omega-3 fatty acids. 7 grams, 7,000 milligrams, which means you eat a can of tuna fish, you don't need to take fish oils for 3 days. It's really, and so Marzi puts capers in with the tuna fish, and it's just delicious. And so our quercetin-rich food, along with the omega-3 rich food, you see, that's the way you start thinking as you learn a little more about these kinds of ingredients. Oh, really? Shallots are high in quercetin? Well, throw some shallots in that salad, and you dice them up and throw them in there. You know, you just start experimenting with this kind of stuff. And in one study, they looked at the amount of quercetin in people's diets and where was it coming from. And so 41% of it was coming from onions and 29% from asparagus, but all these things have quercetin in them, as the list that I just showed you will give you. So any and every rational thing that we can do that may support the innate immune system is worth considering, meaning the rainbow diet, a little bit of quercetin, a little bit of tonic water maybe, a little bit of vitamin C, a little bit of zinc. This paper came out about a year ago, a little over, and I put it in here because it shows how the foods that we choose can exacerbate or dampen that inflammatory response that comes from the innate immune system. Dietary carbohydrates, animal-based proteins, and fats are important to highlight because they may contribute to the long-term consequences of nutritionally mediated inflammation. What do they mean by dietary carbohydrates? Whites, white rice, white bread, white pasta, white sugar, things like that will increase the amount of inflammation that your body deals with. And I showed you this one last time. We want to be heading in the direction to the right, going to the right. Once again, the deeper and richer the colors, the better. And I showed you this one last time about all the vitamins and minerals that are in the rainbow diet. Inadequate amounts of these lead to a decrease in resistance to infections. So the most potent thing you can do is what's on the end of your fork. And I showed you this one last time, but I want to show it again because of the second bullet there. Supplementation above the RDA. Doing the RDA means you aren't going to get diabetes if you take this amount, or you aren't going to get cardiovascular disease, supposedly, if you take this minimal amount. We want to be above the RDA right now. We want to have optimal levels. And as an example, this paper came out about late March, early April, regarding our current pandemic and the dosing of vitamin D. And I recommend everyone get a vitamin D finger prick test. That it's the most important test I think we get every year, is to check your vitamin D level. Have your healthcare practitioner do a vitamin D test for you. And vitamin C, the doses that are safe and will still reduce the length of ICU stay. And here, reducing intensive care, the need to be in intensive care by 18% if they took those dosages of vitamin C. Given the insignificant cost, even an 8% reduction in ICU is worth exploring. They're just trying to say, hey, come on, docs in ICU. We should be doing IVs of vitamin C for just about everyone that's there. Vitamin C and other antioxidants are currently available agents to reduce the symptoms associated with this current virus that we're exposed to. So I just wanted to show you this one, and then we're ending. This paper came out 2 days ago. 2 days ago. The strict quarantine measures taken in China to prevent the spread of the novel coronavirus has significantly reduced air pollution in the country. This is a conversation we're going to have when we're done with the pandemic conversations. According to a new study, cleaner air has helped prevent an estimated 12,000 deaths due to pollution during the country's ban on traffic mobility in just 1 month. It reduced 12,000 deaths. Now, this study, led by researchers from Yale and published in the journal Lancet Planetary Health, finds that the deaths avoided by cleaner air are higher than those lost from the pandemic. 4,600 people died in China from the pandemic during that period. 12,000 deaths were avoided just because they had cleaner air. So hopefully this will be fuel for conversations about cleaning our air when trying to reduce degenerative diseases in the future. I thought it was a very cool study. And their summary, our estimates suggest that interventions to contain the COVID-19 outbreak led to improvements in air quality that brought health benefits in non-COVID-19 deaths, which could potentially have outnumbered the confirmed deaths attributable to COVID-19 in China. This came from Yale just a couple days ago. Okay, all of these studies will be available to you if you want, but you can watch this again and again and again. It's free. It's going to live on Facebook and in our YouTube page. Please ask your family to watch it if you think this is of value and that they'll pick up some good ideas from it. And the videos and the slides and the studies and the MP3s are also available to you if you wish. Just go to theDr.com/coffee for that. Thank you all very much for your kind attention. We'll see you next week, next Monday at 9 a.m. Pacific, and wishing you a wonderful week. Thanks so much.